How Steve Jobs became the man we know today. Born on Wednesday, 24th of February 1955, Steve Jobs grew up surrounded by machines and electronics, a humble background from which he grew to become the American designer, inventor, and entrepreneur that we know today. In today's video, we'll be looking at the lives of Steve Jobs to use his life story to inspire young people who may be discouraged about life. We hope this video gives you the courage you need to believe in yourself and pursue your biggest dreams. If you're new here, consider subscribing so that you won't miss other interesting videos like this. Steve's birth. Little is known about Steve's birth parents, but we know that he was born in San Francisco, California, and was adopted into the loving family of Paul and Clara Jobs, earning him a new sister, Patty. Steve's adopted father, Paul, was a machinist whose hobby was fixing cars. Steve's earliest memory of his father was about him being very talented at working with his hands, a skill that Steve would take up as he grew up. When Steve turned 6, his family moved to Mountain View, an area that was fast becoming the center of electronics like television, radios, and computers. It was at this time that the area gained its name, Silicon Valley, because silicon was the main substance used to manufacture the electronic parts at the time. As a child and the only boy, Steve preferred to keep to himself, participated in swimming sports but was uninterested in any group activities. His early interest in gadgetry and electronics ensured that he would rather spend his time in the garage workshop of a neighbor who worked at Hewlett-Packard Company, a budding electronics manufacturer. Eventually, Steve joined the Hewlett-Packard Explorer Club, where he saw engineers demonstrate their new products. This would lead the ever-curious boy to see his first computer when he turned 12, and when he did, he was so impressed that he knew right there and then that he wanted to spend his life working with computers. By the time Steve got to high school, he was certain of his path. He attended lectures at the HP plant, and on one occasion, he boldly asked the president, William Hewlett, to give him some parts that he needed to finish a class project. I can imagine the look on the president's face at the time. But instead of chastising or ignoring the young boy, William was so impressed by his gumption that he not only gave Steve the parts, he offered the boy a summer internship at the company. College and travels. As soon as Steve graduated from high school in 1972, he went to Reed College in Oregon, but dropped out after one semester during the summer in 1974 to visit India and study Eastern religions. If you think that was a bad idea, think again. The next year, Steve joined a group called the Humbreed Computer Club, and that was where he met Technical Wheeze and his namesake, Steve Wozniak. At the time, Wozniak was trying to build a small computer, and Steve was fascinated with the marketing potential of such an electronic device. By 1976, the two lads formed their own company, which they called the Apple Computer Company, remembrance of the happy summer days that Steve had spent picking apples. At this point, the two young boys needed cash to run their new company, so they sold Steve's microbus device and Wozniak's calculator, earning them $1,300. So, what was their new company going to do while they worked on the computer prototype? The young entrepreneurs started out selling circuit boards. Apple and the PC era. As time passed and the two friends continued to work hard, then one day it hit Steve. There was a very huge gap in the computer market that needed to be filled. Back then, most computers were mainframes that were so large that one could fill up a room, plus they were so expensive that most people could not afford them. So what did the lads do? Instead of following the status quo, they redesigned their computer, having the idea of trading it to individual users. By 1977, the Apple II went out into the market, earning the young boys an impressive $2.7 million in the first year. Within 3 years, the company's sales increased a whopping $200 million. This was how Steve and Wozniak opened an entirely new market for electronic devices, personal computers, or PC. These PCs would herald an entirely new way of processing information. As the years flew by, Apple continually evolved to keep up with competitors emerging in the marketplace. First failure. In the early 1980s, Apple launched the Apple III device, but this new device suffered terrible marketing problems and technical issues and had to be withdrawn from the market. Steve didn't give up though. The Apple III was redesigned and later reintroduced successfully into the market. Competition and downfall. In early 1983, Steve, the marketing force behind Apple, unveiled the Lisa, a device for people with little computer experience. Unfortunately, he made the same mistake that the previous computer manufacturers had. He made Lisa so expensive compared to the PCs sold by his competitors, resulting in poor sales. That same year, Apple lost about half of its market share to its competitor IBM. The string of bad luck did not end here. In 1984, Apple launched another new model, the Macintosh. The new device required the use of a mouse to point and click at icons on a screen, making the device very easy to use. Unfortunately, the Macintosh did not make great sales, especially to businesses because of its lack of a corresponding printer, a feature that other computers had. This new failure would signal the start of Steve's downfall at the Apple company. He was eventually forced to resign in 1985, though he maintained his position as board chairman. Next, Toy Story and Apple. After his exit from Apple, Steve dabbled in a new computer company called Next. In 1988, he introduced a new computer aimed at the educational market, but even though the device was met with a warm reception, it still flopped because of its high cost and black and white screen. But Next was not the end of Steve. In the late 1980s, he bought a small company called Pixar. Yes, the same Pixar that 9 years later released the popular animation Toy Story, and later Toy Story 2, A Bug's Life, and Monsters Incorporated, among others. All these films became widely successful. In fact, Monsters Incorporated had the biggest opening weekend ticket sales out of all the animated films in history. Many years later, in a funny twist of event, Apple bought the Next software for more than $400 million, ushering Steve's return as a part-time consultant at Apple. The next year, in another surprising turn of events, Apple partnered with one of its competitors, Microsoft. Marriage and kids. In the early 1990s at Stanford Bridge Business School, Steve fell in love with and married Lauren Powell, an MBA student at the time. His quiet and studious wife lived together with him in Palo Alto, California, and they eventually had 3 children. Over the years, Steve went from the smart but directionless young man to drop out of college to experimenting with different pursuits. He worked hard to translate his ideas into innovative and exciting products for individuals and businesses. He was a great influence in introducing the age of personal computers. During the last 10 years of his life, Steve fought with pancreatic cancer, a battle he lost, resulting in his death on October 5, 2011, at the age of 56. Thank you very much for watching our video. We'd like to give you another interesting video for you to enjoy next. But before then, our team will be very happy if you can like this video and share it with your friends on social media. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss other interesting videos like this. Look at your screen now to see 2 other videos we handpicked for you to enjoy next. We love you.